true act of courage this week in Washington when Senator John Fetterman released this statement through his office. Senator John Fetterman checked himself into Walter Reed Medical Center to receive treatment for clinical depression. And while John has experienced depression off and on throughout his life, it only became severe in recent weeks. A senior aide to Fetterman is telling the Wall Street Journal that the senator will remain hospitalized while doctors try new medications and dosages and will engage in talk therapy as well. Fetterman's brave admission was met with a rarity here in Washington, and that is bipartisan support. Among the tweets of encouragement came from Ted Cruz. Mental illness is real and serious, and I hope that he gets the care that he needs. And also this from Jack Reed: it takes a big man to admit when he needs some help. So welcome to the panel, Leanne Caldwell of the Washington Post. This is, I think, a moment where I think everybody took a step back and said, you know what, this is just a sign of how far we've come on some of these things. It was not too long ago that a lot of politicians would have tried to hide this. Maybe they would have gone and sought help, but they wouldn't have released a statement saying, I have clinical depression.
They'd also have to hide it because opposition research would come out that they had the problem and it would be weaponized against them. Since the show is called Inside Politics, I'll be the cynical one and say that after the midterms, people learned maybe not to attack John Fetterman about his health. The performance in the debate was not seen as something that was like crippling to him. There was a lot of fundraising that came in, and a lot of people started talking about having a stroke, mental health, not punishing people for those problems. So I think that lesson sort of sent the message that if he's public about something now, it's not a good look to turn that into something to weaponize against him.
And partly because, yeah, a lot of people are affected by depression. A lot of
people themselves,
and their
teenagers right now, so
yeah.
It's such a big issue.
And just listen to this from Tina Smith, who spoke about her issues with depression. This was back in 2019.
It was a spiral, and the worse things got, the more frustrated I became that I couldn't get it together. Down and down I went until I could no longer even see hope on the horizon. I definitely wasn't living my best life. I really wasn't living at all.
And Leanne, look, a lot of members have had health challenges. Several have had strokes themselves. But Senator Smith there also going to the floor and saying, this is a challenge I faced. There are a lot of other members who I think probably have had these struggles privately as well.
Yeah, and I think that there's a huge effort to not stigmatize mental health anymore, something that has been done for generations, really. And there's an acknowledgement, as Audie mentioned, there's a public health crisis in this country. There were two other senators who had strokes just last year, Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat from Maryland, and also Ben Ray Lujan, a Democrat from New Mexico. And there is pressure to from staff and from those members to show resiliency and a quick comeback, and that doesn't seem to happen with John Fetterman. We have all become aware of the post-stroke depression when our colleague Blake Honshaw, had severe depression after his stroke, and it's interesting watching John Fetterman walk around the halls of Congress. I'm there every single day. And there's, he isn't able to really engage with anyone. Reporters aren't able to talk to him. And in a very social job where Democrats have lunch together several times a week, not being able to really engage can, I'm sure, be very, very difficult. And something that one of Fetterman's senior aides also said was that at times it was difficult to differentiate the stroke conditions and the depression conditions, and he was able to get help himself. So
yeah, that is really fascinating. Such a good point to bring up. Just take a look at these poll numbers. I mean, things have changed so much in this country. 87% of Americans agree that having a mental health disorder is nothing to be ashamed of. 86% say that people with mental health disorders can get better. So in addition to what Audie's talking about here, there are some political downsides to the bullying, frankly, is how I would put it. Partly because a lot of Americans recognize that this is something a lot of people deal with. It also probably is something that Congress should deal with, too, addressing the mental health challenge as well.
Well, it's true. I mean, Americans believe that mental health is not just a problem, but a crisis. A majority believe that things like the opioid crisis, the teen mental health crisis, that these are not just problems, but they have grown and grown and grown to become enormous and significant. I think what you're seeing right now with the bipartisan support for Fetterman and saying, well, I hope he gets better, is an acknowledgement that he deserves our empathy in the same way that voters deserve transparency. It's good if he is setting the precedent that our elected leaders will be fully transparent with their voters, both before and after elections, about their condition to the extent that it can affect their ability to do their jobs. Voters at least deserve to know that information.
Yeah, I mean, this is also, and just to switch gears real quick,